Notre Dame, look at what you could own if you only wanted to. Welcome to the ACC Power Rankings right here at the Voice of College Football. We ask that you like the video, even if you don't agree with me. If you enjoy the discussion, the debate, and the analysis, we aim to make it the best in college football online. All right, let's get to the ACC Power Rankings and Virginia Tech. The worst team in the league, one of the worst teams in the Power 5. Heck, maybe one of the worst teams in college football. Grant Wells threw a 53-yard touchdown pass in the game's second play, and the Hokies could not score another point against Duke. They're 2-8. They're 1-6 in the conference. They've lost 7 consecutive games for the first time since 1951. And guess what? Virginia Tech goes to Liberty. That should be an automatic win, but as Virginia Tech has shown us against the likes of Old Dominion in recent years, that is no way an automatic win. They should be an underdog. I've not checked the point spread. Virginia Tech at Liberty. The Liberty Flames are 8-2. They beat Arkansas. They came within a 2-point conversion of beating Wake. All right, now to the 13th best team in the ACC, the second worst. That's Virginia. We talk about Brennan Armstrong in these ACC power rankings every week because I just cannot believe the free fall that this quarterback has taken, who led the nation in yards per game last year and threw 31 touchdown passes. And now it came to this. Now against Pitt, if you didn't already see this, Brennan Armstrong threw not one pick six, not 2 pick sixes, but he threw them both on the first 2 attempts of the game. Within 16 seconds, he had 2 pick sixes. Pitt led 14-0, and Virginia lost 37-7. The Cavaliers, awful at 3-7. They take on Coastal Carolina, a 9-1 football team coming up this Saturday. At number 12, we've got Boston College, just 3-7 under Jeff Hafley. We expected more this season, and they finally, in their 10th game, delivered with Emmett Morehead, the redshirt freshman quarterback, making his second career start. He lit up the North Carolina State Wolfpack, threw a touchdown with 14 seconds left to one Joseph Griffin, and the BC Eagles win a big game. They defeat a ranked opponent for the first time in 8 years. They defeat North Carolina State 21-20. BC still a lost season at 3-7, but hey, something to get excited about here in November. They've got Notre Dame coming up on Saturday. At number 11 in the ACC in our Voice of College Football ACC Power Rankings, Georgia Tech coming off a dismal performance against Miami. They lost 35-14. It was the Zacks at quarterback for Georgia Tech, meaning Pyron and Gibson. They threw 4 interceptions. Georgia Tech playing better football than they did under Jeff Collins, but still not good enough and still not very good, period. Georgia Tech takes on North Carolina on the road in Chapel Hill on Saturday. The team that defeated the Yellow Jackets behind a new quarterback themselves. So Jake Garcia, the backup to Tyler Van Dyke, no more. It's Jakari Brown, 14 of 19. And the freshman also scored 3 touchdowns. Very nice opening performance for Jakari Brown as a starter as Miami knocked off Georgia Tech by 3 touchdowns. Also, Jalen Knighton, 118 yards and a touchdown. Cam Kinchins picked off 3 passes. Nice outing by the Canes as they move on to 5-5. They might get to bowl play. They've got Clemson coming up in Death Valley. That's probably a loss. That's almost assuredly a loss. They've got a game against Pitt to try to get to 6 wins. At number 10 in the ACC, Miami. At number 9, we go to Pitt, the team that the Canes play in 2 weeks. And the Panthers coming off that performance we outlined against Virginia, 37-7. MJ Devonshire and Marquise Williams were the guys that picked off the passes and took them to the house. The first double pick 6 for Pitt since 2006. Israel Abanikanda, one of the best running backs in the nation. He's 6th in the nation in rushing, despite missing some recent games. Ran for 121 against the Cavaliers. Pitt is now 6-4, 3-3 in the conference. They've got a date against Duke coming up on Saturday. Now to the free-falling Demon Deacons of Wake Forest. Once an undefeated football team that barely lost to Clemson then, 51-45 in double overtime, still gained so much respect for that. And now they've lost 3 consecutive games to fall to 6-4, and they've been mostly ugly losses, although they almost pulled one out against North Carolina on Saturday. Lost it on a field goal with about 2 minutes left in the game, 36-34 at home. So, Wake 2-4 in the conference, despite Sam Hartman firing 4 touchdown passes. This team is 87th in total defense. Wake is 6-4, taking on Syracuse, another team that is free falling at this point in the ACC. Our number 7 team in our rankings, Louisville. They were on a nice streak of winning 4 consecutive games, but they fall at Clemson, losing that one 31-16. Louisville, coming up this weekend, takes on NC State. At number 6 in our rankings, a team that got off to a hot start, so consider this for Syracuse. There was a time where they were not only 6-0, they led Clemson going into the fourth quarter at 21-10. 6-0 in Death Valley, leading Clemson by 11 points to take control of the division, and it's been nothing but a free fall ever since. They've lost 4 consecutive games after blowing that double-digit lead against Clemson. Even had Garrett Schrader, their quarterback, back against Florida State, and they got trounced at home against the Noles, 38-3. They only converted 1 of 11 third down plays, and Syracuse finishing out the string, but at least they're bowl eligible. They go to Wake Forest and probably lose that game. Syracuse now just 6-4, and they fall to number 6 in our ACC rankings. We still have to honor the good work that the Cuse did early in the season. At number 5, vaulting all the way to top-tier status in the ACC, how about Duke? They're 7-3. They're 4-2 in the conference. They've already, with 2 conference games left, have already won more conference games than they have since 2015. Consider the previous 2 seasons that Duke was 1-17 in the ACC. They're 4-2. Their 3 losses this season are all respectable losses. They lost in the closing seconds to North Carolina by 3. They lost on the road to Kansas by a touchdown. Sure, they lost to Georgia Tech, but Georgia Tech was playing decent football at the time. Duke is a solid football team under Mike Elko. Riley Leonard with 3 touchdowns against Virginia Tech as they won that game, and now Duke goes to Pitt to try to win an 8th game. Wow. At number 4 in the ACC, Florida State. Wow. They had the 3-game losing streak. Now they got a 3-game winning streak. They've run into some patsies, and they have buried them. Florida State has outscored these 3 opponents 124-22, including, of course, Syracuse. We just talked about that game, 38-3. The Noles outgained the Cuse 420-160. Jordan Travis barely let the ball hit the ground at the Carrier Dome, 21 of 23. He had 5 touchdowns. He threw 3. He ran for 1. He caught 1. Florida State has finished out the ACC season. They've got Louisiana coming up next week, and then the rivalry game against Florida. So they're at 5-3. This is Florida State's best finish in the ACC since Jimbo Fisher, 2016. Wow, Florida State could close out at 9-3. Now we move on to the number 3 position in the ACC, and despite a deplorable loss as a 17-point favorite, we still have to honor the complete resume of North Carolina State. Now 7-3 after losing to BC 21-20 in the final 14 seconds of the game. North Carolina State blew a 14-0 lead. They turned the ball over 4 times in the second half. And yes, they outrushed Boston College 200 to -1, still lost the game. NC State, a disappointing loss to drop to 3-3 in the ACC. They've got a date at Louisville. Interesting game. Cards and Wolfpack. Think it's going to be a good one coming up on Saturday. Final 2 teams in the ACC are clear, and they will meet in the conference championship game in Charlotte. We've got North Carolina. They've played a weak schedule, but it's getting tougher. It started this last Saturday with a win against Wake. They've got NC State in 2 weeks, and then the conference championship game against Clemson. Drake May making a late push. Well, he's made an entire season push for the Heisman. 448 yards passing, 78 on the ground, 4 touchdowns. Josh Downs has had some remarkable recent performances. He caught 11 against Wake for $154 and 3 touchdowns. He's caught 74 passes this year and 11 touchdowns. The Coastal Division champions, Mac Brown's North Carolina Tar Heels. And maybe, I know it sounds like a joke, but if chaos ensues and they finish 12-1 as the ACC champions, maybe they squeeze into the playoffs. But they got to do a lot of work because the resume is weak for a national title contender, that's for sure. North Carolina takes on Georgia Tech this Saturday. And finally, the top team in the ACC, despite the drubbing against Clemson, and now the top team in the ACC, despite the drubbing in South Bend 2 weeks ago, Clemson has certainly been the team. They're the only undefeated team along with North Carolina, but Clemson playing the better division and the better opponents, have the wins against Florida State, Wake, Louisville, Syracuse, everybody that's decent in the ACC. But it's about winning the ACC now and possibly squeezing into the playoffs despite, again, a blowout loss on the road against Notre Dame. DJ Uiagalelei had an efficient, decent game. Phil Maffa and Will Shipley combined for 203 rushing yards in that game, and Barrett Carter was all over the place, 3.5 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. Clemson is, by any standard right now, still the cream of the crop in the ACC. Let us know what you think about our ACC power rankings with Clemson at 1, North Carolina at 2, the only undefeated teams in conference play. Of course, Notre Dame beat both of them. Then we've got NC State at 3, Florida State at 4, Duke at 5, Syracuse 6, Louisville 7. Then it goes Wake, Pitt, Miami at 10. Number 11 is Georgia Tech, BC at 12, coming off a nice win against NC State. And then those hapless schools in Virginia. If you live in Virginia and you love football and can't stand basketball season, I feel for you because it's going to be a long winter for Hokie and Wahoo fans. Our ACC power rankings, and we run through all the conferences, the Big Ten, the SEC, the Pac-12, and the Big 12 right here at the Voice of College Football.